Welcome to Let's Talk Careers, a talk show for students.
Hosted by students.
And we're your student hosts. Hi, I'm Taylor, a senior at Wheaton High School and Thomas Edison School of Technology.
And I'm Summer, a senior at Bethesda-Chevy High School.
And I'm Nick Asante, your SMOB and a senior at Richard Montgomery High School. We're delighted to introduce our career guests for today, leaders from the world of government and politics. Welcome to Let's Talk Careers. I'd like to start off by introducing you to Senator Kagan, who represents Rockville and Gaithersburg and serves as the Vice Chair of the Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee. Senator Kagan was named a municipal superstar for the 5th time in 2020 as a result of her effective leadership on behalf of Maryland's 157 cities and towns.
Glad to be here, and I also want to mention that I'm a very proud Churchill Bulldog.
Furthermore, as the first Chinese-speaking legislator in the Maryland General Assembly and the Greater Washington region, Maryland State Delegate Lily Qi was elected to the Maryland House of Delegates in November 2018, representing Montgomery County. She also is a speaker, writer, and advocate on immigrant integration, civic engagement, and Asian American issues.
Good morning. So happy to be joining you, and it's wonderful to see young people interested in politics and policies. Thank you.
And with pleasure, I would love to introduce Montgomery County Executive Marc Elrich, who was elected as Montgomery County Executive in November 2018. Over 12 years, he served 3 times on the Montgomery County Council as an at-large member, first elected in 2006. And prior to that, he was a teacher at Rolling Terrace Elementary School in Tacoma Park for 17 years.
Good morning, and thank you very much for having me. And I'm a proud Einstein Titan.
And last but not least, Montgomery County Councilmember Sidney Katz was elected to represent County Council District 3 in November 2014 and was re-elected to a 2nd term in 2018. He started his public service career in Gaithersburg, serving on the Planning Commission from 1976 to 1978. And then from 1978 to 1998, he served on the Gaithersburg City Council. He was then elected mayor of Gaithersburg in 1998 and served for 16 years when he resigned upon his election to the county council.
Thank you. Good morning. And I'm a proud graduate of Gaithersburg. I'm a Gaithersburg Trojan, and my daughter works at Churchill. So she too was a Churchill Bulldog. Thank you.
That being said, good morning, and thank you all for being here today. This show is coming to you live via YouTube by the way of Zoom. Before we start our interview questions, I want to briefly talk about the importance of Let's Talk Careers. This show is designed to let students learn about different career paths and the journeys of successful men and women, just like the speakers with us today. Students are submitting questions live via our YouTube chat and have also sent in questions prior to today's show to ask our guests. We will do our best to answer as many questions as we can.
So let's start off today's conversation by giving our audience a chance to become more acquainted with our guest. I'm going to pose this question to all of you. Is there someone who inspired you to get into politics and why? Senator Kagan, let's begin with you.
I was vice president of student government at Churchill, but had never been interested in real life politics. It was first semester freshman year at Vassar when I took an American politics course, and my professor there helped me understand that the views that I thought were common sense and moderate were actually progressive or liberal. I ended up walking in onto a presidential campaign headquarters in downtown DC and just got hooked and have been active ever since.
That's an awesome story. Thank you for sharing. And what about you, Delegate Qi?
Well, a lot of people inspired me over the years. As you know, I'm an immigrant, so American politics was a learning curve, a steep learning curve for me. But I found myself loving working for local government, starting with Washington, D.C., and then transitioning to Montgomery County, where I lived and raised a family. I was inspired by County Executive Ike Leggett when he became the first minority county executive, and then still was a predominantly white community. I was inspired by Hillary Clinton and her fighting spirit for women and to never give up. Along the way, I got involved and was inspired by a lot of local leaders in different ways, but mostly by women and minority elected officials, and see how they apply themselves to change their communities.
All amazing role models. And how about you, County Executive Elrich?
So I had a long road to politics. When I was at the University of Maryland in the 60s, I started there in 67. The campus student government was controlled by two conservative fraternity-based parties. I started a third party. We called it Third Party, and we took over the student government at the University of Maryland. We were all progressive left people. I was very involved in the civil rights and the anti-war movement for a long time. When I got out of school, many years later, I've been active in the county and still active in the anti-war movement since the U.S. was constantly invading Central America. And I went to a meeting in Minneapolis and with people who had been community activists also, and they talked about their political experience or working for political campaigns for people. And then when they elected these people, the promises they made, they never kept. And they said, it's time for us to start electing people who actually believe what we believe instead of electing people who say they'll do things, but don't really believe it. And so I decided to get involved in Montgomery County. I got elected to the city council in Tacoma Park, served for 19 years, and then got elected to the county council of Montgomery County.
Thank you for sharing that wonderful background. And how about you, Councilmember Katz?
Well, mine is similar, but slightly different. In my case, my family owned a small business in Gaithersburg. Gaithersburg was a much smaller place than it is today. It was a small town. In fact, I'd like to mention in the 60s, I think Blair High School was larger than the whole town of Gaithersburg at that time. I had become the president of the Masonic Lodge, local Masonic Lodge in Gaithersburg. I was the youngest one that they had ever had. And a mentor of mine, a good friend of my family's, and his son was my good friend, a gentleman by the name of Carol Kearns, who was a teacher and a vice principal and a principal ultimately at Gaithersburg, in those days junior high, now Gaithersburg Middle, came into our store one day and he said, Sidney, we need young people to get involved in Gaithersburg. Why don't you start coming to City Hall? And it was those days, it was before cable and before that you could sit in your living room and see a meeting. So I started going to meetings because I knew Mr. Kearns would not ask me to do something that I shouldn't do. And so that's how I got involved. And I always like to say to students, the reason I got involved is because someone asked me, and I am asking you directly, please get involved. We need everyone to help us, especially young people. Thanks.
So that was awesome. Just to get a little bit more insight on each of you, students are wondering, what has your favorite job been and why? Senator Kagan, we can go ahead and start with you.
It's a hard question. I've been blessed, so I'm going to do two quick answers, and I'm leaving out my tenure in the Senate and in the House. First, I worked at Sears Montgomery Mall, and it was my first time really building relationships across different kinds of community, interacting with the public in a real way. I was in high school and I loved it. It was a second family. And the second one I will say is after I stepped down from being in the House of Delegates, I ran a charitable foundation that contributed over $1 million a year to area nonprofits. And we made a difference. Just a few $1,000s can make a huge difference when you're talking about those who are hungry or homeless or battered. And the ability to really step in was very inspiring.
Thank you. Delegate Qi, can you be response?
Yeah, I have had many jobs and in fact, more than one careers. It was just mostly because I didn't know what to do with my life for the first 10 or 15 years of my life. So I stayed in school for too long, got multiple degrees, and moved across 4 states and just tried different things to find my place in this country. But along the way, I learned more about myself, what I could do. And I had a couple of jobs in higher education, which was very meaningful. When I was working at American University, I was assistant director of multicultural affairs. And that was the first time I got exposed to the struggles of other minorities besides my own struggle as an immigrant. And it was profound to work with the predominantly Black students managing the minority retention program. That really was a huge education for me in understanding American subcultures and what made America America. I would say one of the other favorite jobs I had was with Montgomery County as an Asian American liaison. It was not a career move as much as a passion move. I became not only the Asian American liaison, but also a Middle Eastern community liaison. I just learned so much about my community where I live and work. I couldn't have asked for more. It's like what you do is who you are kind of thing, you know? That's the definition of an ideal job. You don't feel like you're working, you feel like you are just living your life the way you want it to live. And so I would encourage all the young people to pursue their passion because life goes by very quickly, whether you like it or not. Before you know it, you may lose, the sight if you just go with the grind and every day. And so it's important that you pursue what you believe in.
Absolutely. Executive Elrich, can you chime in?
So yeah, it's interesting. I never wanted to be anything other than maybe center fielder for the New York Yankees or something like that. So when I started out, I wound up being the manager at Montgomery Wards. Not my favorite job, but I did that for about 8 years, and I started out as a stock boy. I would always come to work in shorts and a t-shirt. And one day they came down and said, "Would you like to be a manager?" And I said, "Yes." And they said, "Well, you're going to have to cut your hair and you have to dress." And I said, "Okay." It wasn't my favorite job because it wasn't like satisfying in some ways, but I learned a lot. And I learned a lot of things that I've been able to carry with me for the rest of my life. I think, my favorite jobs, I worked in a food co-op. I was one of the founders of the food co-op in Tacoma Park. And I was able there to bring over a lot of what I learned in the business world to the food co-op, which was run, a lot of us were counterculture folks, and we knew a lot about counterculture, didn't know so much about business. And I was able to bring over things that I picked up from the business world that helped us run a better business. And I think my all-time favorite job was probably being a school teacher. I taught 4th and 5th grade. And I always thought those 2 years were probably the most important for a kid, because they make fundamental decisions about what they're going to do going forward. Are they going to take school seriously, or do people start giving up then? And I felt always, even as tough as it could be some days, I felt like every day was a day where you made a difference. Politics, you don't always feel that way. It's a lot of struggle. Sometimes things work out, sometimes things don't. But school was just incredibly rewarding. And I highly recommend anybody who wants to help shape another generation. School is a great place to do it.
Thank you. Councilmember Katz, what about you? Favorite job?
Well, thank you. That is a tough job. I just want to tell Marc that I would have come to the games to watch you play center field. I would have enjoyed that, no question. I guess in my case, I've had 3 and probably more than that, but my family owned a small business, and each one of your jobs, each one of the careers that I've been involved in has certainly formed me for who I am. But my family had a small business. My grandparents had started it in 1918, and I actually owned and ran the store up until the time I was ran for the county council. But so being a small business owner certainly was very significant to me, and I really loved it. Being mayor is a wonderful job. You realize that all the things that you need to do, you need to be helping someone do that. And so I enjoyed that very much. And candidly, I enjoy being on the county council. It's very different than being a mayor, because especially in our case, we deal with a lot of constituent services. And when you're mayor, especially of Gaithersburg, you thank the person who called with their concern, and you pick up the phone and you call the city manager, and the city manager figures out how they're going to handle the concern. But and with the county, it's a much larger place. So you have to coordinate so much more. But I've enjoyed all 3, and all 3 have been very, very important in my life.
Thank you so much. And this question is coming live from YouTube. Students are asking Executive Elrich, what did you teach?
When you teach 4th and 5th grade, you teach everything. So I taught all the subjects in my class. I think I liked mathematics best, but not for the reason you would think. When I was a kid, I only did advanced algebra and trig, and then I said, that's enough math for me. And I didn't go any farther because I couldn't see what I was going to do with calculus in my life. When I was teaching, I realized how much mathematics actually taught fundamental logic, and that in order to be successful at math, once you have to do word problems, you have to be logical. You have to be able to analyze a problem and understand what you're being asked, and how do you find the right information. And I realized that skill transferred to everything else a person did, whether you're reading a book about history or reading science. It's teaching you to think logically. And so I became pretty obsessed with doing a lot of work with my kids in math because I saw the skills transfer. So I really enjoyed it. It was, of all the things I taught, I think math was my favorite.
Thank you all for sharing. To move on to another question, which is also a very fun question. So I'm assuming that your positions could require 24 hours of your time with little breaks. So what things or hobbies do you do to relax or unwind? And we can start off with Councilmember Elrich. Council Executive, sorry.
So if you look behind me, you see there's 5 guitars there. And so this is my office. And so I have the ability, I can actually sit here and do meetings and stuff. And if I get a few minutes, I can just spin my chair around and pick up a guitar and fool around a little bit. On my other screen, I've got the ability to pull up sheet music, and I can actually get the lyrics and the chords, and so I can practice stuff. So that's what I do for fun. And I've done a bunch of, little gardening things outside and little projects like building a fence, because working with your hands is actually really satisfying. It's good to get your hands on things and to know you created something. And there are a lot of, I know a lot of people who can't do that. And how do you do that? It's like, well, I don't know, I just try. I encourage people to try. You'd be surprised how much you can do if you try.
And Councilmember Katz, would you like to add on?
Yes, you don't have a whole lot of time for the relaxation side of it, but I've always enjoyed reading. There was a time in my life, and it's not this time because I don't have the time, but there was a time in my life I used to read about 1,000 pages a week, all escape reading or much escape reading. Usually about 3 books, fiction and nonfiction, and every other, I never really was into sci-fi, but other than that, murder mysteries, all of that. I just love it. And as I say, I don't have the time that I used to, but that's how I relax.
And Senator Kagan, would you like to add on as well?
Absolutely. So I will, like County Executive Elrich, music is a big part of my life. For the past 18 years, I have hosted a nationally known concert series called Folk and Great Music. I bring national touring singer-songwriters to my home in Rockville. And the other big passion of mine, I'm going to change my background for a moment, is Scrabble. I am a nationally ranked Scrabble player, and I compete in tournaments at least once a week. And they go until late at night, but it's a great way to keep my brain active, but also escape from all the pressures of this job.
It is amazing to hear that you all are able to balance that fun and as well as your busy lives. But State Delegate Qi, would you like to add on as well?
Well, being an elected official is a pretty contact intense life. Style. So I actually enjoy solitude. I enjoy reflection. I try to keep an active diary so that I have dedicated time to think for myself without being cluttered by any activity or must-do things. And I enjoy that very much, besides reading and listening to music. I'm generally a pretty boring person. I don't have very exciting hobbies. So being by myself to reflect and enjoy and read is great for me. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for sharing those answers about what you do in your free time. And so now we're going to shift gears back to your work and your job life. So can you guys all speak a little bit about, what skills are needed for your roles and for your jobs? Councilmember Katz, can we begin with you?
Sure. I believe that every skill you have ever had and can ever get, you need in this job. And of course, in all of our cases, we have staff members that work for our offices that also need to bring those skills as well. Not everybody can be an expert on every topic. And even when there are experts, even the experts sometimes agree and disagree on a topic. So, but every skill, I mean, obviously reading and Marc mentioned mathematics, we deal with that quite a bit in a budgetary process. People skills, extremely important. You're dealing with people in some cases who are just plain angry that the system didn't work or that didn't work the way they wanted the system to work. So you have to have people skills to first off find out what the problem is when someone is yelling at you. In some cases, you don't even know why they're yelling in the very beginning. So you have to figure that out. But at every type of skill, every type of subject that you've ever, even lunch, because you have lunches with people, at least you used to before COVID. So there's not one item that you won't be using.
That's good to know. How about you, Senator Kagan? What's your take on this question?
So I suspect that we're all going to say slightly different things, but the answer is likely to be all of the above. So whatever each of the four of us says. So I will tell you that I have had high school interns. It is never too young to get involved and to start learning very close up about politics and policy. For me, I need a passion to make a difference and help people. Writing skills. If you're a high school student thinking about government, please pay attention in English. Make sure that you can write and edit. Make sure you are thorough and attentive to details. Sloppy work is always unacceptable. If I'm relying on you as my staffer, as my colleague, I need to know that what you tell me is factual, and because I'm going to count on it and use that when I testify or send a tweet even. So please make sure that you focus on that. And as Councilmember Katz said, people skills, just warmth and empathy and caring, attention to details, again, with follow-up and helping people address their issues with government.
Thank you for that.
I'll say one more thing. Sorry, one more thing is creativity. I like people who think outside the box. Who are very linear, and first we have to do A and B and C, and sometimes you just have to think way creatively, come up with a new idea that will help fix a problem or sponsor legislation that will address a pending policy, thorny policy issue.
And I'm sure that creativity is really coming into play right now with COVID. Delegate Qi, what are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, I agree. It's all of the above. But for me, I am made aware even more so now as an elected official that one, we need to learn to compromise across the aisles and know the big picture because sometimes we get so deeply passionate about the bills we want to introduce and not seeing how it may play out in the larger context. A couple other skills I would emphasize, especially for young people, is analytical skills, whether you like certain subjects or not. As County Executive Elrich mentioned, the math skills can teach you critical thinking in different ways. And as Senator Kagan mentioned, the writing skills, they're all very important, especially for me who speaks English as a second language. I would put a great emphasis on the ability to communicate well verbally, as well as in writing, because that's how you introduce yourself to the world, basically. A lot of people don't have the time and attention to pay great details to the specifics that you do, but it's how you communicate that makes a difference in connecting with people and selling your ideas, so to speak, to get the support you need to get things done. And you know, analytical skills will stay with you for the rest of your life in terms of making quick judgment on things, because we don't have time to dive deep into everything. So we just have to rely on our instinct. But that instinct comes with experience, comes from studying. very deeply sometimes on issues. So I think the breadth and the depth are both required. It's a generalist job, but it takes every ounce of everything you have learned, just like Councilmember Katz said.
Thank you for sharing that advice. And County Executive Elrich, do you want to have the question off?
So a few things, I think the ability to listen is critical. And I think patience is really important. Some things don't reveal themselves instantaneously, and you've got to be willing to work through a problem. I think openness to learning is important. There is no way that my life prepared me for everything that I was going to encounter here. And I spent 12 years, elected in the county and 19 years on the city council in Tacoma Park. And there are still new problems and new issues that don't resemble or aren't what you dealt with before. But the two big things I look at is one is the ability to imagine. Too many people come into a place and they say, well, this is the way it's been run, and this is how we've done it for 20 years. And so take the seat over there and do what we've been doing for 20 years. I've actually told my staff, imagine every day you come into work, this is your first day on a new job in a new enterprise, and all you know is what the enterprise is trying to achieve, but you haven't decided how you're going about achieving it. And think about the workplace as how would you organize this workplace? What would you do to achieve your end, rather than just sit down and do what somebody told you they were doing for the last 20 years. I want people to imagine how you can do things different and better, because you don't improve unless you think about that. And along the same way, there's a philosophy of, people get defensive about changing their mind. I've heard, people say, well, you shouldn't change your mind. It's like, yes, you should change your mind. You should always be open to changing your mind. You should be vested in trying to do the right thing. That's what everybody should be vested in your life is, what do I do that's right? And hopefully you make all your decisions based on that. And sometimes what you think is right, the way you're trying to do it isn't going to get you there. You've got to be willing to abandon the way in order to stay true to the goal. And some people, that's a hard thing to do, but if you focus too much, people are going to think I made a mistake and I shouldn't, and I did this and I got to stick to it. That makes you inflexible, and I don't think it gives you the ability to grow and to lead the way you need to be able to do it.
Thank you. Now this question is a little bit more meatier, just warning you. Just so students understand exactly the differences between all your different careers. As a delegate, Delegate Qi, what specifically do you do?
Great question. I was just asking myself as of 2 years ago when I was running the campaign. And it was not what I thought. I thought I would be just doing legislative work. But actually being a state delegate, you are first and foremost a representative of your community. Just like a council member or county executive and any level of government officials, you will deal with and address a lot of issues that your community needs you to pay attention to, whether it's of your personal interests or your legislative focus or not. So constituent service is a major part of it. And sometimes you also play a role as an advocate to the governor, to advocate to Speaker of the House, to advocate to other levels of government about your community's needs. And you also play the role as a convener to connect people in your community with resources and with other players that could address the issues and solve their problems. And of course, you are still first and foremost a legislator. So you come up with ideas, and sometimes creative ideas that will take months and years of research and hard work and convening in order to bring all the parties together and listen to them and figure out the best way to solve the problem and to fill the void without hopefully, unintended consequences or minimizing unintended consequences. So there are multiple roles that we play as state representatives, as a state delegate.
Thank you. Senator Kagan, can you expand on what you do as well?
So Delegate Qi did a great job. There are 1/3 the number of senators as the number of delegates. So there are 141 members of the House, generally 3 in each district. There's 1 senator, and there are 47 of them in the state. So in addition to everything that Delegate Qi said so beautifully, I would add that we are also role models, community leaders, spokespeople, coalition builders, and I'll tell a very brief story. when I was deciding whether or not to run, I was reading the newspaper back when it was on paper over breakfast. And I used to say, that's an outrage. Someone ought to do something about that. And when you're an elected official, you can say, that's an outrage. I'm going to do something about that. And I very recently noticed that there were signs that said handicap parking in front of a state building. I wrote a letter to the Secretary of General Services saying that is outdated language and it's offensive. And they ended up changing every sign at every parking lot at all of the state buildings just because of one letter that a senator wrote. You can make change, make a difference, and help people.
Thank you for clarifying on that. Executive Elrich, can you add on?
Yeah, so I mean, I've served as a legislator like Mr. Katz, and I've also been, so now I'm an executive, and there's a difference between these things because, when I legislated, you'd pass legislation and you'd hope that somebody would execute it. When you're the executive, you have to execute things. And I don't mean execute in the bad sense, I mean make them actually happen. And so your responsibility is making sure that people in departments are carrying out what the missions of the departments are. You have to evaluate whether you're progressing the way you want to progress. Are you doing the things that were expected of you? But you also have to have some imagination because if all you're going to do is sit there and steer an existing ship, then that's a lot easier job to do. You just tell other people keep doing what you're doing. You have to have some goals in mind. And I came in with things I definitively wanted to do. I wanted to address racial equity issues. I wanted to address transportation issues. I wanted to address environmental issues. So you have to then put together a team that will create a program. Because I started out with an idea, but all of us want to end global warming, right? How the heck do you end global warming? It is not as easy as saying we're all committed to doing this, because what are you committed to do? That's a series of things that you actually have to execute in order to achieve your goal. And so we're just unveiling our global warming plan now. It is comprised of a series of things that the county is going to have to do. And we'll go over to the legislative side, the council, hopefully to embrace this, and then we will embark on doing the things that will get us to the goals we have. And that's where the legislative and the executive branch work together. Ideas can come from either side. At the end of the day, once an idea is decided on, you have to carry out that idea. So it's a combination of managing what is and imagining a future and planning a way to get to the future. And then all the other skills everybody talked about in terms of convening meetings and talking to people. I think, the Zoom has meant that I have less time now than I ever had because there's no travel time between my meetings. And so people figured out, well, if he's not driving for a half hour, I can squeeze a meeting in there. So be prepared.
Thank you for clarifying on that. Councilmember Katz, you have anything you want to add?
Well, I can also say all the above and pretty much everything that everyone else has said, with the exception of Marc. Marc is an executive, so therefore he, at this stage of his life, is doing things slightly different than what he did before. But we are the legislative branch in the county. There's 9 county council members right now. There are 5 of us are in district and 4 are at large. I'm a district council member. That will change because of this last amendment that was just voted on. It will change to 7 district council members and 4 at large. So there'll be 11 of county council members. But it's everything everyone else has said. You need to do it all. You need to have the legislation. You need to be a convener. You need to do every part of this. In addition, as County Executive Elrich pointed out, you need to work with the other agencies in the county, especially the county executive. That once legislation is passed, it goes to his office. We always say it's across the street, but it goes to his office to be the group that executes. I don't know that I like the term executes. That is the person that takes care of seeing that it's done. And that's what we have to do. We need to work together. And that's one of the concerns that I've always had with Montgomery County, that when I was a mayor and somebody'd say something was wrong in Gaithersburg, you'd say, I'm sorry, and let me make a phone call and figure out what's going on. In the county, there's so many different divisions. Somebody will say, well, that's not me, that's the county executive. Or that's not me, that's the Board of Education. Or that's not me, that's Maryland National Capital Park and Planning. And the list goes on and on and on. And that's part of the problem, is that because, and each one is right. They're all separate entities, but we need to make certain that it blends together and that the puzzle fits together.
Thank you all for sharing once again. So our next question is actually pre-submitted via WUFU, and the question asks, how hard do you believe your job is on a scale of 1 to 10? And if you could also give a short justification, that would be much appreciated. Senator Kagan, would you like to start us off?
I think it's about a 12. It is all-encompassing. It is 24/7, 365. You can be in a grocery store sick with the flu, not COVID, but sick with a cold or something, and someone will come up to you and say, what are you going to do about this issue? You're never off the clock. You're never off duty. I took an enormous pay cut for the honor of doing this job, and I work all the time. And you know what? I adore it. I am honored. It is a privilege to represent the residents of Gaithersburg and Rockville and the issues that I'm passionate about. I love being an advocate, a spokesperson, and a representative of the people.
Councilmember Katz, would you like to go next?
Well, I think Cheryl said hers is 12. Mine is probably 15. I have to see. I have to raise her a couple. But I don't look at my job as being a difficult one. It's not. I mean, if you love your job, then it's not difficult. It's fun. And there's days that it's difficult to figure out how to fit it together. But to her point about that you're never off the clock, I always joke that, in the bean aisle at Giant, I get a lot of work done. I mean, somebody will come over to me and say, Sidney, I'm glad I bumped into you. There's a problem with, and they tell you what the problem is. And we've all get this constantly. And I say to them, thank you. And I, make certain I get notes and give them my email address so they can actually email me with every part of it. But then I ask them, I said, look, my real concern here is it is a problem, but if you hadn't bumped into me at the bean aisle, why didn't you call me? That becomes the issue, because the chances of us seeing each other is not, always the same. So that's part of the job. But I have to tell you that the best part about the job is that you do get to help people, and there's no better part. And I always used to tell, especially when I spoke to grade school children, that the worst part of the job is you don't always get to help everybody. There's always a problem, and you make phone calls and you call the other agencies and you do everything so necessary to do. But there's sometimes some problems just can't be solved by us. And so that always becomes the difficult part. But in general, you get to help an awful lot of people, and that's really a great feeling.
Well, I think I speak on behalf of the students here today when we say thank you for all the work you put in. And County Council Executive Elrich, would you like to add on to this question?
I think I experience everything that Cheryl and Sidney talked about. I mean, when I was in the Tacoma Park Council, we would go up to the farmers market on Sunday. My kids would get furious because we'd walk into the market and I would get stopped. My family would go through the rest of the market. They do all their shopping. I would be lucky if I had moved 10 feet from the point that I was originally stopped, but I wouldn't be talking to the same person 10 feet later. I've been sitting in restaurants and had people come over and talk to me, or sometimes yell at me in the middle of dinner with my family, which isn't fun. It's hard to judge things in the middle of COVID because, we're making life and death decisions now. Every time, and I'll be blunt about this, every time we make a decision about what we've opened or closed in Montgomery County, we're under enormous pressure to open things up. We know that every time we open something, we're going to increase the spread of COVID. It is not possible to open things and not increase the spread of COVID. And if I increase the spread of COVID, then that puts people at risk, which is why we have lagged behind what the governor has done from the beginning, because we're trying to be as careful as we can, because human life is not replaceable. And we're trying to make sure that, and we keep saying this now particularly, that please behave during the holidays and don't see anybody during the holidays. So a year from now, we can all see each other together again, but we want you to be around a year from now to be able to do that. But if I was placing this in a scale of 1 to 10 normally, I actually would probably be closer to an 8 in the difficulty, because I really feel, I got a taste of it as a teacher, where you take your job home every single day, and it's not like the complexity of work and the difficulty of dealing with political people. It is the angst over a child's life. I think about the social workers I know, and administering to children who are abused and, in challenging situations. And the fact that they go home wondering whether they did everything they could and is that kid going to be okay the next day. There are lots of people in our society who do jobs that none of us would do. I can list the long list of things I would never want to do. And so I think about that and say, yeah, this is hard, it's challenging, but there are people who do things that are probably harder than what I do, and unfortunately get paid a hell of a lot less than I do.
So thank you all for taking the time to, reflect on your job in its current state. I'm going to, shift gears back to the past. I'm going to ask all of you, what was it like to launch your first campaign? Putting yourself back into the beginning of your political career. What was going through your head, and how did that entire process go? Let's start off with you, Delegate Qi.
Thank you. Well, how much time do you have? I could write several books about this experience. As I said, I'm an immigrant. American politics was a huge learning curve because I lived through a very different political system, and I came to this country when I was already an adult. So there was the unlearning and relearning process. Politics was not something immigrants think about when we came to this country. We just wanted to have a decent life, have a shot at American dream, so to speak. But over time, I got more and more involved in community affairs. And I realized that to really be the kind of American I wanted to be, I had to fully immerse myself and also bring along other people. So I wouldn't be able to say, exactly what or when I decided that I wanted to run for office. But it was a long ramping up process. As I got more and more involved, I got more and more passionate, and I saw more and more issues where my voice could make a difference. So my first campaign, and my only campaign really, I got lucky that I got elected the first run. Took me a long time to decide if politics was actually right for me. Even though I was already working for a political official, even though I had supported many other candidates over the years, over a decade or so, I was very hesitant to actually jumping and run for office because I didn't have immediate role models of people like me. And no one could really understand how torn I was in explaining myself to my own Chinese immigrant community that I could actually be a credible voice to represent their interests and be that missing voice at the table, at the grown-up table, but at the same time, also explain my platform and understanding of America to the larger Democratic voters in order to win the Democratic primary election. And the lesson I learned about Montgomery County today was profound, which is we exist in parallel but isolated universes. We have a lot of diversity, but we have very little integration. Our communities largely don't talk to each other. And as a result, when it comes to electing minorities and people like me, we have to bear so much burden in trying to speak to different communities to understand each other. And now, Montgomery County is made of half minority and 1/3 foreign born. If we want to see more people like me in offices, we have to rethink what party politics mean. We have to rethink what diversity and inclusion mean. in a very deep, profound way. And I have a lot more lessons to share, but I can tell you one thing to conclude my remark, which is I ended up having to be micro-targeting my community to unleash their energy, because I wouldn't be proud if I would run a typical traditional textbook campaign without bringing along my community. I had to explain why it's important for them to switch parties from independents to Democrats so that their votes would matter. And so many people did. As a result, my district saw triple increase of Chinese American votes in the Democratic primary. It was unprecedented. It was unfair to put the burden on one campaign, but I did it, and I'm proud of that. I hope more candidates would do that. I ended up having to run 2 concurrent campaigns to convince my community to change parties and explain all the nuts and bolts of campaigning to them, so they would understand how politics really works and political election system works. At the same time, had to sell my platform to the Democratic primary election super voters. So it was extraordinarily challenging, but I'm glad I did it. And we unleashed a lot of new energy because of that.
And thank you so much for sharing that. And I think, your story kind of resonates with me a little bit. When I running for SMOB, I know the scope's not as big, but running for the student member position on our Board of Education, I'm an immigrant myself. So I think I took that immigrant lens in a lot of the work I do now. I'm trying to draw on my own experiences. And so your story really, like I mentioned, resonates with me. How about you, County Executive Elrich? What was your first campaign like?
I'll leave out my school campaigns because they were different. I ran for city council in Tacoma Park, I think in 1981, and I lost. I came in third. There was 5 votes difference between first and third. And so it was a very close contested race. And I had been doing tenant organizing in Tacoma Park. I had moved here, I'd gotten involved with tenants, I was a believer in rent control. We had a bunch of god-awful landlords who had turned buildings into, slums. When I was doing organizing, we would bring tenants up to the council building and force them to march out of the council building and go down the street and look at some of these buildings. I remember going down to a building where there was water coming out through the elevator shaft from a broken pipe that was just running and running. We put people through, I thought, miserable conditions. And I found out that, in running and advocating as I did, I probably lost the 5 votes I needed because people thought I was too extreme and I was going to organize tenants and we'd have this horrible conflict. And my view was always like, well, if you're going to treat people like this, you deserve horrible conflict. You can't, the saying, no peace, no justice. No justice, no peace. So I always believed that, that you have to be willing to push. And so it was really gratifying to get as far as I did. And, I ran again in 87, I won, I stayed there for, I guess it was 17 years until I got elected, no, 19 years until 2006 when I got elected to the council. But I ran 4 times for the county council before 2006. And I lost all 4 times, but I was always close. And I kept looking and I said, I had very little money. I was the least funded candidate of anybody. I took no money from developers. I still don't do that. And so I couldn't put out ads. I could do 1 mailer in a countywide race. That you don't win with 1 mailer. But I looked at my vote totals and I said, someday I'm going to get just enough money to maybe do 2 mailers and part of a 3rd mailer. And in 2006, I think I did 2 full mailers, almost full, and then a partial mailer. Couldn't go to everybody I wanted to get to, and it was enough to get me into the council. And, I did pretty well after that. So persistence is a good thing. And if you believe in what you're doing and you can rally people around you, and it's really important. And then when you get elected, you're supposed to do what you told people you were going to do. That's the other critical thing. You can't run on one thing and then discover that you're going to go do something else. That doesn't sit very well with people.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's an important lesson for a lot of the students viewing to know. If things don't work out the first time, that doesn't mean you should quit and give up. What about you, Councilmember Katz? What was your first campaign experience like?
Well, you all are bringing back a few memories here, so I appreciate that. But I mentioned Mr. Kearns, and Mr. Kearns was on the City Council of Gaithersburg, and he decided not to run for re-election. So he stopped by one day. I was on the Planning Commission at that time, which was the largest or the most active committee for Gaithersburg. And he came by and he said, Sidney, I'm not going to run. You ought to consider running. And I had never really thought about it. I mean, once I got on the Planning Commission, I had thought somewhat that, that I was working with the city. And then my good friend, Ed Bohr, who, for those of you who are familiar with Gaithersburg, next to Gaithersburg High School is the Bohr Activity Center and where the skateboard park and whatnot. And Ed Bohr was on the city council at that time, and he died in office. And that's when I became mayor, was when he had died. But he came into the store and said, Sidney, why don't you and I run together? Let's. And of course, our campaigns were nothing similar to what the campaigns that we run today. I remember vividly, we didn't have signs. He was annoyed because whoever else was running did. And I said, well, we ought to get some signs. So he and I, like a high school campaign, we got a few signs together and we put those up, and we were successful. He was already on the city council, and we were successful. And people have always been extremely kind to me along the way. I often tell people that one of my real advantages in life, and I'm a local. I mean, I grew up in Montgomery County, and I know a few folks. But one of the real advantages that I have is that people will tell me when I'm right, and people will tell me when I'm wrong, and people will tell me when I've done something that's stupid. And I say, you can't be married and have, I'm the youngest of three brothers, and you can't be married and have two older brothers and not have somebody tell you when you're stupid. But it's so necessary, because I always joke that when I became mayor, my jokes became funnier. Everybody wanted to be my friend. They would laugh harder. But and I appreciate that. I want you to, everyone to be my friend. But I also want you to tell me to be my friend, to tell me when something is not working. We all need that. Every person on this, every elected official on this call, there are things that you try and you mean well that don't work. And so you need somebody to help you out with that. And let me just say one other thing and I'll stop. But of the three other elected officials on this call, I'm very proud to say at times I have supported each and every one of them. And I'm very proud that I have done that, because each and every one of them has done a good job. I mean, we don't always agree on every topic, and that's okay. But each and every one of them has done a very good job, and they work hard.
I love that camaraderie amongst all of you. And, thank you all for the work that you do. Senator Kagan, would you like to finish this question off?
Absolutely. So when I was 18 and just getting started in politics, I thought someday I would run for office. And as I developed my political career, I realized that I didn't want to serve in office. I saw how hard it was, how critical people were, how mean that the political process could be. And so I had worked at National NARAL, working to protect women's reproductive choice. I had worked on campaign finance reform in Washington, and I had helped pass the Brady Bill and the assault weapons ban, working on gun control issues at the national level, changing laws at the national level. So when my state senator was running for governor and one of our three delegates was running for Senate, there was an open seat and people started saying, you should run. And I said, no, not interested, blah, blah, blah. Long story short, it took 8 months for me to decide that I would give it a go. It was a 10-way race with the two incumbents seeking re-election, and then a former delegate, a former county council member, the son of a state senator, former state senator who had name recognition, an assistant state's attorney. It was a very strong field. And I said I was going to have to out-fundraise, out-door knock, out-hustle, and just have the best volunteers and the best mailers, the best campaign. And what Delegate Qi talked about, the ethnic challenges, I will tell you that as a young woman, there were challenges, and I think things are better now. And I am so inspired by Kamala Harris and her ascension. Finally, we're going to break a glass ceiling here. But I was asked all the time how old I was, whether I was married, whether I had kids, and men who had run younger and more single, because I had a boyfriend at the time, than I was, were never asked about their age, their marital status, or whether they had kids. And you can't really shut down a voter and say, would you ask me that if I was a guy? Because you want their vote. So you have to try to educate and inform them, but do it gently so that you can still get their support. Fundraising was critical. And a lot of times people think that it's big special interests that help fund a campaign. I can tell you that for a first-time candidate, it is not often that. It is your friends, your family, your colleagues in various old jobs, it's neighbors, and people sometimes will apologize. Oh, I'm really sorry that my donation is just $20. And I say, that's $20 more than I had before this. So thank you. So a little bit from hundreds and hundreds of people gave me the funds I need to get the word out, to get my platform and my background out there to the voters. And ultimately, in my first race, in a 10-way race, I won my first election to the House of Delegates.
Thank you so much. That was all so enriching. We're going to try to squeeze in some of our YouTube questions because they're flowing in. So Caleb from YouTube is asking Councilmember Katz, would you rather have a staffer who is talented or hardworking?
First off, it's not an either or. Every hardworking staff member is both, and so and I appreciate the question, but you need both. And I also have to tell you that every one of my staffers that I have now and have ever had have been both, because it is so necessary. So we're very fortunate.
Thank you. Executive Elrich, anything you want to add to that question?
I think Sidney nailed it. You've got to have both, and you can find people who both are hardworking, and it's not an impossible thing to do, and you really need it. You really need somebody who can do both.
Thank you so much. Another question coming from YouTube, Senator Kagan, you did kind of touch on this a little bit. You were hinting. How do you deal with criticism?
Depends on the day, depends on the issue, depends on the person, frankly. Trolls on Twitter or people who post on my Senator Cheryl Kagan Facebook page and just say, you're stupid, you're a moron. I mean, just gratuitous, ridiculous personal insults, I ignore and just try to zen past it. When they're people that I think are of goodwill and truly just don't understand the issue, I will take the time and try to explain it. Perhaps I wasn't clear. Here's a link. Here's more information. Let me explain what it is that you're asking about. So it really depends. So I have 5 Facebook pages, 2 Twitter accounts, 2 YouTube channels, and an Instagram page. And I just launched a vlog or podcast, Kibitzing with Kagan, and I have conversations with people I find fascinating. So I work really hard to be accessible through social media. There are ups and downs to that because people feel like they know what I'm working on. They know that I'm accessible, but they also, it offers more avenues for them to criticize or attack me. And that's okay. You have to have thick skin to run for office. It's not to say it never stings, but you have to get over it.
Thank you. Delegate Qi, do you have anything you want to add to that? How did you deal with criticism?
I agree with the Senator Kagan. I would look at the merit of the issue raised if it was a credible criticism and try to look past the emotions or some unnecessary language, colorful language sometimes added to it. In one of my email newsletters, I talked about why the county had to take certain measures and caution people to continue to wear masks and talk about the grim picture of the deaths and all that. And a reply came back from someone I actually knew and had met before saying, you know, are you some kind of a communist authoritarian, whatever? And that got really personal. And I happened to grow up in communist China. There was a reason I left that country because I wanted to be an American, right? And to get to that point of low, I think it was just appalling. So I tried to look beyond that kind of rhetoric and look at the issue, you know, and focus on solving problems and not get personal about things. But you do get things like that, you know.
Taylor, can I just say one more quick thing?
Of course, of course.
We live in a democracy, and we are blessed to live in a democracy. And what I always remind my staff, my campaign workers, and others is that we're not going to get 100% of the vote. And it is okay to disagree. I would prefer that people disagree agreeably and with respect. But ultimately, if you believe that X is a great idea, and I think X is a terrible idea, and that's your number one issue, I always tell people, vote against me, run against me. It's okay. That's part of the great joy of being an American.
Just to add on to that, could you just expand on how do you reach across the aisle and work with somebody who you don't necessarily agree with?
To me?
Yes.
Sure. I do it regularly, not every issue, but on a shocking number of issues. And unfortunately, we see the pattern of what's going on in Congress and how Democrats and Republicans and Mitch McConnell is just, such a buzzkill and preventing anything from moving forward, especially desperately needed support for our local governments, nonprofits, and individuals who are unemployed. What we need is to be able to collaborate. And in Annapolis, we do that. I will tell you that, and many of you might have heard this, but I always talk about how 3 people have died in my district when 911 has failed. And I have worked with Democrats and Republicans to address public safety issues. We've enacted 9 laws so far and just released our 3rd annual report with 22 recommendations. We are going to pass more bills this year relating to 911 to make sure that no one's constituents die because the technology hasn't been upgraded, because the geographic information system, the locating technology hasn't been upgraded, because we don't have someone who's trained under the headset helping in cases of emergency. That's something that people from any party, any ideology should be able to get behind.
And this question for Delegate Qi. So how have you used social media as a way to connect with your constituents?
Thank you. I would confess I'm not as fluent probably as my son's generation. He's a graduate of MCPS, but I think social media is a powerful tool. And for me, I not only use Facebook and Twitter, but I also use something called the WeChat, which is a very important tool for me to connect with Chinese American communities who are largely immigrant communities, and that's where they live on. So as a politician, or what you call politician, elected official, we have to go where people are. In real life, you will have to go to the Korean churches and Chinese schools because that's where people gather, right? The mosques or whatever. And online, you have to go where your communities can be found to spread the message. If there's an important news release I want to share with the people, I have to not only post on Facebook and Twitter, but also I have to remember the extra stop, which is on WeChat. That's hundreds of my followers watching. So it's wherever people are gathering, wherever is efficient for you to get the messages across. And that reflects our ability, sincerity in connecting with people. And I'm proud to have a long track record along with Senator Kagan in focusing on government cultural competency, on making things linguistically accessible to our diverse communities in many ways. And I happen to speak Chinese, so that's extra helpful because I could take my message to local Chinese community media, for example. And by the way, the Chinese community in Montgomery County is the largest single ethnicity in the Asian American community that speaks English as a second language. The Indian Americans are almost as large, but they mostly are a lot more English fluent. So the challenges are different, and we just have to go where people are.
Thank you for your insights on how you're using these, innovative platforms to reach out to your constituents. So this question stems from YouTube, and I think all 3 of us hosts today can relate to it. But the student is wondering, if they're interested in going into politics, what major should they go into? What major did all of you guys go into, and how do you guys keep up with all of the new information that you have to learn on the job? You're dealing with so many topics. So how do you keep up with all of that info? Did your college education prepare you for all of that? Let's start off with Councilmember Katz.
Well, thank you. as I said earlier, there's not one skill that you wouldn't be using, and that continues. My bachelor's degree was in business and public administration from the University of Maryland. And the only reason I had the public administration side of it was that was the only way the degree was given. I was, had a store and wanted to have a business degree, so that's why the college that I went to. So, and then ultimately in my life, I use both parts: the business side, obviously, and then the public administration side from being involved in government. So that is how I got involved, and that's my background. I also believe that, and the question is, how do you keep up with everything? Reading it, and I said earlier that I really don't have time anymore to read for the escape side of it. Everything that I read anymore pretty much has to do with on the job. And it's a constant thing, and especially now because you get so many competing so much competing information that's given. I mean, you can Google on a topic, and you'll have 50 different viewpoints, some of which are accurate and some of which are not, and you have to figure out what is and what isn't. So we keep up with that, and there again, we're dependent on our staff, who become the experts on the topic and who inform you as well.
Makes a lot of sense, with so much information and all of the research that you have to do. And I think especially now with COVID, all the new stuff that you have to learn for it. County Executive Elrich, could you talk on the topic a little bit as well?
Sure. I was a history major in college. And I remember when I graduated, I would go through the want ads for jobs, and back when they had those things, and I kept looking for somebody who was looking for a history major. I guarantee you that actually never happened. But I was really interested in history because I wanted to understand how people built their ideas. And I thought that, when you study history and you look at events, you begin to understand how cultures develop, how they evolve, how ideas get planted, who plants the seeds in the culture, who are the information leaders that, either influence for good or bad how society develops. And when I went back to grad school, which was also in history originally, my professors wanted me to become a professor. And I said, I don't want to do that. And they said, what do you want to do? I said, well, I'm interested in doing organizing and political work, and I want to keep studying history as it helps me understand how people build their ideas. And I've always felt like, it's easier to talk to people if you understand how they got to what they think, even if you don't agree with what they think. If people just go at each other and just accept the fact that we simply disagree, it helps a little bit to understand what underpins another person's thinking, because sometimes you can talk about the underpinnings without directly confronting the particular conflict or disagreement, and make progress with people by talking about, well, how did you come to understand things this way? So I liked history, but for what I do right now, what do I read? I read lots of scientific stuff because I was always interested in science, and what's happening with COVID has made me even more interested. And because Montgomery County has this absolutely amazing life sciences industry, and they're doing so much more than COVID. We hear about COVID now, but the advances that are going on totally intrigue me. And I love going to these companies and talking with the scientists, not about political stuff, but I want to know, how's your vaccine work? How's your treatment work? So that to me is really interesting. I do a lot of reading on human evolution because that's another topic that totally fascinates me. So I'm interested in all the discoveries people do with that. Like Sidney, I do no pleasure reading anymore. I don't know what it means to sit down and read something for fun. So it's, whatever I read because it adds to what I know. And then I'm reading about, I wouldn't say budgeting information, but theories of how one does budget, or how do you manage this. I'm very interested in bus rapid transit. So I look at, what are the advances out there in transportation. I read about things that I'm interested in, and that makes me happy. But it also means I don't sleep because, like I think other people have said, when you're busy from 8:30 or 9 in the morning till 9 or later at night, and then you try to feed yourself dinner and whatever else, there ain't a lot of time to do anything that's entertaining or free. And I feel there's so much to learn, even at my advanced age of 71, that I want to keep learning. And so I postponed the diversion.
Glad to hear about your dedication to lifelong learning. And speaking of which, in the same realm, you also kind of mentioned COVID. I know the Board of Education has had the chance to work with you and the County Council a bit. So County Executive Elrich, could you start off talking briefly about what you're doing right now to work with the...
I wanted to talk about my college major, and I think Delegate Qi didn't get to. Can we do that briefly?
Yeah, go ahead, Senator Kagan.
Do you mind? Okay. So what I want to say is something. So first off, I was a poli-sci major, but I didn't want to be. After my freshman year, the story that I shared when I was inspired my freshman year and ultimately decided that would be my career, I didn't want it to be my major. And so I took philosophy and art history and American culture and so many other classes. And then I kept taking the courses that interested me, which were in poli-sci. And ultimately that was the number of credits I needed, and I just became a major. So I'm just going to suggest follow your passion. You can be a biology major, you can be a philosophy major or an anthropology major. The key is what you do with your summers and your spring breaks and December breaks. I have had interns come and work for me for 6 weeks during their December breaks from college because they wanted an experience in government and policy. Summer interns, high school and college students. So it's not about your major so much, in my opinion, as it is learning the skills. And this goes back to what we want in staff or what we need as elected officials. And it's really about everything we've already discussed. So I don't need to rehash that. In terms of what we read, which was the second part of the question, ironically, I've actually had more time to read because I'm not commuting, I'm not in the car so much. And so I actually have picked up a book. My book club has been together for 31 years now, which is extraordinary. And so we are connecting more through Zoom and reading more. And that's a real joy. But there's also a lot of reading for the job. Briefly, how I get my news, it's not only the Washington Post and local news, but it's the Baltimore Sun, which is a key resource for state news. And Maryland Matters is a blog I totally recommend that posts insider stuff on politics and policy multiple times a day. Is very good. The Seventh State and many other sources. And then there's obviously all the national sources as well. So the key is making sure it's accurate and thoughtful and thorough and not just getting a brief glimpse through a tweet.
Thank you for giving those insights. I think right now we see a lot of oversaturation of different types of news. So, it is important to make sure that it's all accurate. Delegate Qi, do you have anything you'd like to add about, your college experience and how you keep up to date with all the information that's being thrown your way?
Well, when I was in college, I didn't even know I would be an American. So that didn't apply. But if I were born an American, if I could do it all over again and knowing how my life would shape up, I would have probably studied history or poli-sci or something. But let's remember what Dr. Martin Luther King said, which is all of us can serve. You don't need the degrees to serve. Just like Senator Kagan said, you can start with anywhere. And as county executive mentioned, a biotech or whatever, you can start from anywhere. You just need a passion to serve your community and make a difference. Start somewhere, and then let that passion take you. Thank you.
Thank you for that insight. And, I think one thing that I've tried to push, and I know MCPS continues to try to push, is that any student can be a leader regardless of your background and regardless of where you start off. And that's something that a message that we're really trying to broadcast. And, shifting gears back to the last question, County Executive Elrich, how have you been working with the Board of Education during COVID? Yesterday we had our meeting talking about our reopening plans, and I know there's been a lot of misinformation in the community about different things going on. So what is your role in this whole reopening of schools plan?
Less than most people think. I mean, I get barraged with, email from, when are you going to open up the schools? And it's like, that is not my choice. That's why you've got an elected school board and, and a school system. So, but we've, Dr. Gales is the one who interfaces most of the school system, and he does it for a reason. I mean, you need scientific and medical advice in making this decision. You don't need the opinion of somebody who's political. And the moment that if I were to appear to be the influencer in this decision, then in fact, it would probably delegitimize the decision, because I'm not a medical doctor. I'm not an epidemiologist. I don't bring those tools to the table. I listen, and I know that, you know, the decisions I've made are consistent with the health officials, not only in the county, but frankly, the health officials in the state. But what people need to hear from are really from health officials. You know, so much damage was done by Trump to the Centers for Disease Control and to health officials in general, that I've made a point of elevating their role, because I want people to understand we're not making arbitrary decisions. We're making decisions based in science. I have, you know, talked with the superintendent, and I've talked with some board members, and, you know, I share, as a former teacher, I do share an interest in, you know, people being able to get back to learning, particularly elementary school kids, because of my experience as a teacher in elementary school. I spent most of my day walking around from desk to desk and talking to somebody. You'd lean over, you'd look at the work they're doing. You might, you know, say a few comments to them. I could pull my aide over and say, can you work with this kid, or can you work with a couple of kids? And that's really hard to do in Zoom. And I think older kids, you know, if they have an assignment to read and discuss, that's an easier thing to do over Zoom, assuming that people are awake, that they don't have a what do you call it, a photograph up on their spot on the screen, but you can actually see that they're alive and paying attention. It's very good, Cheryl. So I think, you know, that the Zoom and, you know, and a more hybrid system, you know, would work for the older kids. We've got to figure out how to get elementary school right, because I do know how hard it's hard for the teachers, and it's got to be hard if you're a teacher with kids at home. Because, you know, you're not helping, if you have young kids, you're not helping your kids, or other parents are probably home trying to help their kids when they can, or you're trying to teach and you've got a kid who needs attention. That has got to be stressful for everybody involved. So we want to be helpful. We're interested in how do we make classrooms safe. My folks have, you know, done some work in looking at what we can do with air movements in a classroom that would help clear out the air and make sure we don't build up heavy viral loads. But again, you know, we're handicapped because there's no guidance from the CDC or from NIST where I can point to it and say, if I do X in a classroom, then I know this is going to be safe or safe enough to let people do that. And so we've actually talked to the governor's folks about this. I talked with this as the chancellor of the University of Maryland. Could they get Hopkins and the School of Engineering to model some classrooms and see what you could do to move the air in a way that would give us a higher certainty of rooms being safe? So my contribution's been sort of like advisory, but I really do rely on my health officials, and you will not find me contradicting my health officials. That would be a mistake.
And thank you for that role that you're, you know, playing in the whole process. I know right now is a very scary time for our community and in all aspects of life. So thank you for that.
You got tough decisions.
Okay, so this is for anybody who wants to take this question. What do you believe are the best ways for students or teens to be civically engaged in their local and overall community? Councilmember Katz, do you want to speak on that?
Every aspect that someone can do involves someone, is helping someone civically. I've always mentioned that when, you know, even if and you might not even think about it, but if you smile at somebody that's having a bad day, it helps them. I mean, you know, you didn't know they were having a bad day necessarily, but you help them get past the problems that they were having. Everything you do, whether it's to be involved in your religious community, whether it's to be involved in as an intern, and we do have some internships available for our offices as well, whether it's to be involved in your schools, on the various clubs. I, you know, as a youth, belonged to youth organizations outside in my school, but outside of my school as well. Found that to be helpful, And so everything that you can possibly do, but the one thing is that you need to continue with it. You don't do it for one time and say, that was pretty boring and I'm not gonna do that again. You got to give it a chance to get past the first initial days of it to see how you can help. But every assistance that you give is sincerely appreciated.
Thank you. Senator Kagan, did you want to add at all?
I agree with what Councilmember Katz said. I will just say briefly, find your passion, because nothing is boring if you're passionate about it. So whatever it is, come with joy, come with thoroughness, and make sure you keep your commitment. If you say you're going to show up at 10 a.m. on Saturday morning to clean up a riverbed from its litter, show up, be prepared, be dressed appropriately, bring friends if you want, and bring joy, and be prepared to work hard.
So I would just add that there are so many more opportunities now to do stuff than when I was younger. 1964, 65, 66, if you were young and wanted to do something, there weren't any environmental groups out there. There weren't, groups working. You could possibly join somebody who's working on civil rights, but that would have been highly controversial because even Montgomery County in the mid 60s was a pretty backward place on the civil rights issues. So you would have had very limited opportunities. Nowadays, you've got multiple groups. You got Sierra Club, Clean Water, you name it. If you care about something, like Cheryl said, if you're passionate about something, you can probably find a group that has places for young people. You can find young people's groups. You can be far more engaged, more opportunities now than ever before. And frankly, I think political people are listening to young people more than they did before. I think that there is an increasing awareness that someday you may vote, and that someday will come sooner than it used to come. And when you do vote, they may remember what you did. So I think that it's you have a better path than you had when I was younger, and I suggest you take it. Find your passion. If you have multiple passions, feel free to fill up your day with as many things you care about. It's all fulfilling. And and you will be able to make a difference. So I encourage you.
Thank you for all of that. And I will say I did get the chance to vote this year, so that was exciting. Since we received so many student questions, we're now going to do a quick speed round, and we're just going to go through each person, give a quick answer for the question. So the first question: did you guys participate in any sports or clubs during high school? Councilmember Katz, let's begin with you.
Yes, I participate. Actually, I have a blind eye, so I couldn't participate in sports, but I did participate in clubs.
Thank you. County Executive Elrich, what about you?
I had asthma when I was a kid, and my mother refused to sign any waiver for me to play sports, which really irritated me and kept me from being a center fielder from the Yankees, I believe, to this day. But I was involved in the yearbook, and I was involved in the political science club at Einstein. I'm proud to say that in 1966, we declared the war in Vietnam an act of U.S. aggression, which really flipped out a bunch of people, but it was true. And I'm so proud of that, because it was a group of kids in high school who said enough is enough. And we did this before it became popular to protest the war.
Sorry you missed out on a baseball career. What about you, Senator Kagan?
So not sports, but student government, the French club, very active in school plays. I worked part-time at Sears, as I said, and I babysat. I was very busy in high school.
A wide range of different activities. And Delegate Qi?
Well, it was a different country and a different time for me, but I was, interestingly, a morning announcer. I was, conducting student choir. So I was active in my own ways, and it was quite fulfilling. So it was just, different in different ways. And in terms of sports, the only thing I did probably was playing ping pong.
Fun.
Thank you. So next question, Councilmember Katz, you did mention a mentor that you had. So Who is your mentor and how did they help you? Just a quick sentence or something.
Well, I know they're trying to ask us to be very quick on that, and I've mentioned Mr. Kern several times, but I also have to say that my parents were my mentors as well. So, they helped me because they have always been there, or were always there for guidance. And I knew that I could turn to them, whatever the problem was, I could turn to them and get good advice.
Thank you, Senator Kagan.
I was blessed with a bunch of wonderful mentors. I will mention Jean Cunahan, who was a former state legislator from Montgomery County, principal, a math teacher, and just a wise friend who has continued to coach me.
Executive Elrich.
I had an English teacher in high school who was a really good sounding board, who I got to talk to a lot and would actually talk to after school, and wasn't just strictly about academic stuff. And I had a lot of respect for her. And she was somebody who I could talk about what I was thinking, and I wasn't warned away from thinking these dangerous thoughts. So that was good to have somebody like that who encouraged you to think.
And Delegate Qi, do you ever have a mentor or anybody to guide you?
Not in the traditional definition of being an active mentor. I think a lot of times in life you will find it that you have to be proactive to seek out other people's help and advice, because people, especially in this country, don't want to be parental. They don't want to come across as telling you what to do, especially if you are a woman and younger. So you need to be assertive and to say, I need your advice on this. And your mentor sometimes could be in an entirely different field and could be even younger than you because they have an expertise or some perspective that you needed. And the other thing I want to point out is throughout my career, I found the other element of mentorship is as important, which is something called the sponsorship. You could find as someone in your organization who could speak for you and your credibility when you are not in the room or at the table. And that person may not be able to mentor you, but that person's influence in the organization could be critical to championing the cause that you are trying to advance and advance and support your work. So try to find someone like that who may not have time to mentor you on a daily, weekly, monthly basis, but could be helpful to you just by putting a good word for what you are doing and for the person and credibility that you have.
Thank you all for sharing. And for our next question, it's sort of a big concept. However, if we can keep the responses short and sweet, we would really appreciate it. So that is, what are you most proud of in your career? And Senator Kagan, if you would like to start us off with that.
Gosh, I almost want to say come back to me, but I've already talked about 911 and saving lives, and that's really been, I think that will be my legacy. But I'll do something more generic, which is standing up and speaking out and being a principled leader, which sometimes means independent and going against the grain.
Councilmember Katz.
Very tough question, because you deal with so many different issues, but I guess if I had to choose one, and this is so tough for me, but if I had to choose one, I would go to the Wells Robertson House. It's a building, it's a home. It's right next to Gaithersburg City Hall for people to change their lives who have gone through recovery or going through recovery. It's been there for many, many years, but we were there from the very beginning when people were very concerned that the city of Gaithersburg would be doing something like that. And some of the same people who criticized that we would do it, the building is right next to Gaithersburg City Hall, the same people that would concerned with it called later and said, Sidney, we were wrong, you were right. And we've absolutely changed so many lives. And that, I guess, is what it's all about, is to turn people's ideas around, to let them realize how helpful all of us can be.
Council Exec Elrich, would you like to go next as well?
Yeah, I think the one thing that probably has been the biggest thing for me was I was a champion of rent stabilization, and when I was in Tacoma Park, we were on the verge of probably getting rid of it. It looked like we were going to lose I would have probably lost a 4-to-1 vote or a 6-to-1 vote then. And in advocating and organizing tenants, we not only saved the law, we strengthened the law. We had one of the strongest, best rent stabilization laws in the country. And, I would argue with people, I said, you do realize that, $50 a month out of somebody's paycheck for rent is a couple of bags of grocery off the table. The neighborhood I live in was one of the lowest income census tracts in Montgomery County. It had the highest number of single parent female headed households of any census tract in Montgomery County back then. And I felt that the fate of these people would mean they would leave Montgomery County and people would just say, well, they should just live where they can afford to live. But where they could afford to live didn't have the schools we had, didn't have the opportunities they had. And I knew what it would mean for those kids not to have access to this. And I was determined that we were going to have a law that protected people. And we did. And we still have a law that protects people. So I'm really proud of that.
And State Delegate Qi, would you like to close us out with this question?
Thank you. This has been such a rich discussion, and I really appreciate the opportunity to join all of you. I do need to leave right after I speak to this question in terms of the difference I can make. So I focus on a couple of areas primarily, in addition to other things that my constituents need me to do. One is immigrant integration issues. After the 2018 election and my own campaign, I really learned an important lesson of how to make sure our election system is more equitable, especially to the immigrant communities that are still averse to party politics, to joining political parties. So every legislative session, I try to introduce legislation to make our election system more open to independent voters. And Senator Kagan and I cross-filed a bill in 2019 that would allow unaffiliated voters to be able to pick a political party and vote for the political offices so that they would have more than just school board members on their ballot. And this session, I'm introducing a bill to open up the circuit court judges' elections to all voters. So you don't have to be an R and D in order to vote for judges, because judges should serve all people and not just people who join political parties. And also, I care a lot about small business and entrepreneurship. It's because as an immigrant came from a country with bad public policies at the time, I know why America continues to be a magnet for people around the world. And if we truly value diversity, we have to make sure Montgomery County is competitive. We have to make sure Maryland is competitive. We have to make sure we are a 21st century community that attract the best and the brightest and not take anything for granted and never be complacent. So I focus a lot on innovation economy, on removing barriers for small businesses, because currently about half of Montgomery County small businesses are owned by women and a lot more are owned by minorities. And we have to understand, for a lot of lower income people and immigrants who don't speak English as a first language, building their own business is the best, quickest way to build personal wealth. So they don't have to be stuck in minimum wage jobs. And so with these life lessons, I'm very gung-ho about advancing economic competitiveness and immigrant integration. Thank you.
I want to once again thank all our panelists for speaking with us today. So we are nearing the end of our time together. So let me ask this final question to our guest. What advice do you have for our students wanting to pursue this career?
Who would you like to start, Summer?
Senator Kagan, would you like to take this question?
Sure. So get involved. And I said earlier, find your passion, get involved, monitor what we're doing, be an informed voter, be connected to us, know your elected officials. It makes me crazy when I meet somebody and I say, so who's your senator, or what district do you live in? And I get a blank look. And that happens with grownups. This isn't just a young person thing. But to be influential, if you say, well, I live in District 17, you're my senator, I say, well, how cool is that? And obviously I want to be connected to that human being. I just want to mention in 2 seconds before we wrap up, in addition to some of the other issues that we've talked about, I'm deeply involved in the nonprofit community. And think that they need some equitable treatment, not just small businesses, but as we work on COVID recovery, we have to focus on the nonprofit sector and election reform. So stay involved and aware of what we're going to be working on during our 90-day, hopefully 90-day session, because there are a lot of issues and you will find stuff that interests you. So thank you for watching this. Thank you for being engaged. And I look forward to crossing paths with you in real life after COVID ends.
Thank you so much for your response, Senator Kagan. Councilmember Katz, would you like to take it off next?
Well, Senator Kagan certainly said it all. I could say ditto for what she said. Getting involved is the key. But please, each and every person who's on this call and who will be hearing this event, remember that you really do make a difference. That you know, the fact that you contact us is important. The fact that you contact others is important. But you know, it's that old story when, and I think Cheryl said it earlier, but you know, you are involved in this, and I always like to say that you know, when you, like in traffic, you look to your left and you look to your right and you say, look at all this traffic. Well, you're part of the traffic as well. You are important to what goes on. If you want to solve problems, you have to help us solve them, and we can all work together to get there. So thank you.
And Council Exec Elrich, would you like to close us out with this question?
Sure. I guess I'd say, you know, I agree with getting involved. Get involved early, get involved deeply. And I'll just say, here's a pitfall along the way. In Shakespeare's Hamlet, there's a line that Hamlet gets, and he says, "But most of all, to thine own self be true." True. You go through politics, people are going to offer you a helping hand up if you only do this or you only do that. And if you do a bunch of getting helping hands because you did this or that, and then they're not necessarily things you believe in, but you think they're expeditious for your career, don't do it. Somebody at some point will remember that. You will most likely remember it, but other people will have a hard time gauging who you really are if you do things for motives that are not what your motives should be. So if you believe something, do what you believe. And it doesn't mean you don't compromise, but it certainly means you don't walk into a room and deal with somebody on a one-on-one basis with an expectation of here's a quid pro quo. Do what you think is right. Stay true to yourself, and you'll have a lot happier career, and you'll always be able to go to bed at night knowing that you did exactly what you should have done, and that's important.
Thank you for all of your time today, and thank you to all of the students who submitted questions. You know, I've followed a lot of your careers for a pretty long time, and I learned so much from this conversation, and I appreciate your stories and your dedication to public service. And I also do want to shout out to our students watching. A lot of our state legislators have college scholarships that are available to you guys. So, you know, make sure to seek those out. For our students interested in learning about MCPS career readiness pathways, please make sure you visit www.montgomeryschools.md.org/career-readiness/plans/HS-plans.
And thanks to all the students who tuned in today. Let's show on screen now the QR code and a bit.ly address. Both the QR code and link will take you to a survey where you can provide us feedback about today's show and future programs. The bit.ly address is bit.ly/letstalkcareersurvey. Please take the time to share your thoughts and ideas with us. Thank you.
Thank you all very much.
You guys did great. Thank you.
This was terrific.
And check our website, www.mcps-letstalkcareers.org, to watch past episodes and learn about career readiness programs that MCPS offers to students. And tune in next month on Wednesday, January 27th, from 10 to 11:30 for the next Let's Talk Careers, when we will be talking about careers in bioscience with guests from the National Institute of Health and the Food and Drug Administration and University of Maryland and Emergent Biosolutions. That is going to be an amazing discussion, and we hope to see you all there. And this is all for today. This is Summer from Bethesda-Chevy Chase High School.
And Taylor from Wheaton and Thomas Edison.
And Nick from Richard Montgomery signing off. Bye, guys.
Bye.
Take care. Bye. Stay safe.